Hey, you're watching HuffPost Live. I'm Janet Varney. I just realized I don't know that I've ever said that at the beginning of a segment. Now we're going to talk about love addiction. Yes, people are now being diagnosed as love addicts, and not surprisingly, the majority of them are women. Men, on the other hand, are more likely to be diagnosed as sex addicts, which from a psychological perspective isn't all that different. So is it truly the case that women are more predisposed to get addicted to love, or do men have the same weaknesses, if you want to call them that, as women with matters of the heart and are just less likely to admit it in the same way? Well, here with us to discuss, we have Tracy Shields, a successfully recovered love addict, business owner, women's advocate, and blogger of The Lovely Addict. We have Pernille Rose Groenkær, director of the film Love Addict in Copenhagen, Denmark. We have Dr. Reef, a psychiatrist and addiction therapist in Los Angeles, California. And the woman behind the article we're going to use as our jumping off point, Vice writer Kelly Bordet in New York City. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. But I'm so fascinated by the idea, especially when we talk about addictions like food addiction or love addiction, things that are, you know, characteristically part of our lives in a way that we can't just go cold turkey on, right? The way that we can with something like alcohol or narcotics.
Sure, yeah. I mean, love addiction was a new area of study for me. It wasn't something I was very familiar with. But like a lot of behavioral addictions, I feel like we become aware of them culturally sort of through celebrity endorsements or through celebrities coming forward and saying they've had difficulties with something. Women tend to be more willing to talk about their love addiction. Men more willing to talk about sex addiction. And I found Pernille's wonderful film, Love Addict, which really kind of delves into men, well, a man and women who've experienced this.
Let's take a look at a clip from Love Addict.
Here's your house. And a night shot at your house, too. You look so beautiful. And here's us together. And we look so cute. And finally, you and me. I love you.
Wow. Okay. So, Pernille, can you tell us a little bit about what we just saw and about what prompted you to make this film?
Well, this is Eliza, who is looking in her book of love, as we would call it, and her actually infatuation with a man who actually haven't met her really yet. So we come into a kind of a fantasy universe with Eliza. And I was very fortunate to work with Eliza, who's also an actress. So in that sense, and this is a film project, we also created some storylines to actually show how far this addiction will take you in some places.
Where do you draw the line between somebody who maybe should seek treatment opposed to somebody who shouldn't?
When you talk about love addiction, I call it more of a relational disorder. It's a disorder focused on how you develop and have developed relationships in your life. When you talk sex and love addiction, I've treated many male love addicts, if they define themselves as love addicts, and I've treated many female sex addicts. I have the treatment center, the control center, where we specialize in behavioral addictions as well as chemical addictions. I don't think there's a gender specificity about this. Mm-hmm. I do think some of it's based on what you're more willing to share, right. And I think some of it is based on cultural norms and how our society views men and women in regards to love and sex.
I want to, Tracy, bring you into the conversation. I've got your blog up right now, The Lovely Addict, and my understanding is that you are a recovering love addict.
My story is very typical of, you know, any woman that grew up the way I did in a somewhat chaotic childhood. But I just took my, you know, my behavior became part of, my behavior for addiction became something that turned into love addiction. I don't think that love addiction is about love at all. It's about the avoidance of the self. And I think that that is the main, should be the main point here.
For most of these disorders, between 60 and 90% of these people also have another disorder. Usually it's ADHD or anxiety disorders or mood disorders or something else. So what the critics will say is, well, is this really love addiction or sex addiction or gambling addiction? Or is this their underlying ADHD? Is this their underlying anxiety disorder? Is it their underlying mood disorder that's playing out in regards to these self-destructive behaviors? And is sex addiction, what I tell everyone when I do lectures on it is sex addiction is not about how much sex you have. And I have many, many men that come to my office and they're like, hey doc, am I a sex addict? Am I? And they're hopeful because they just got busted by their wife for cheating. And most of the time I'm like, no, you're not a sex addict. You're just a jerk. And, they have to hear that because there's no accountability on their end for doing what they're doing.